Hey, welcome to Brighter Rays. This week we are looking at a study in Genesis chapter 47, and we called it You Have Saved Our Lives. Now, last time we looked at chapter 46, which had three very distinct sections in it. We saw Jacob's vision of God in Beersheba, and we heard Jacob heard encouragement from God, and he publicly worshiped God there at that city, which had lots of family history for the family of Jacob. In the second section, we are told of those from Jacob's family that entered into the land of Egypt. So we saw that list of all those names there. We considered some interesting points, some interesting things about the list, specifically the names of Judah and Benjamin. Some of those things kind of stood out there. How did Judah have grandkids that went into Egypt? How many children did Benjamin have? That was a question we kind of looked at. And then we saw the beginning of where our story really starts today. It's really a new chapter that begins here. And Jacob and his family arrive in Egypt, led by Judah, who went before them into Goshen. Jacob and Joseph and the father and son were finally reunited after all these years apart. When Joseph had finished, greeting his father, then Joseph turns to his brothers with some instructions on what happens next. What are they supposed to do? Joseph was to bring his brothers before Pharaoh. And when he asked them what was their occupation, they were to say that they were shepherds, because the Egyptians thought that all those who worked with animals were an abomination. That way they would be able to settle and live separately from the rest of the people of the nation. They wouldn't be fully integrated into the nation. They'd be separate. And that kind of brings us where we pick up the story in chapter 47. The brothers have really been briefed on how to approach the Pharaoh, which, they needed to know that. And now they wait for their opportunity to speak with him. And I've divided this chapter down into three, it's pretty natural parts here. The first section is from 1 to 12, which describes how Joseph settles in the land of Goshen. He settles his family there, and it kind of shows that. And the second section is 13 through 26, and here we find a description of the aftermath of the famine that is in the land and how Joseph wisely behaves. And the last section relates to us the confirmation that the promises of God to Abraham of fruitfulness and multiplications have come true. And we hear Jacob's desire to be buried in the tomb of his fathers. Well, hope that you feel that, part of what I've said week after week in these studies through Genesis, I hope that you've picked up the repetitiveness of it. And I tried to not be heavy-handed on it, but it is repetitive, and there's a reason for that, because the Holy Spirit, through our author Moses, has been repetitive in his themes. There's been themes that have been going through this, and I try to make that point too, that there's themes that we need to pay attention to that are all throughout this book, and God often does that for us. It repeats things so that we would understand. We need repetitiveness, and we understand that. That's how we learn as people. So this count of the beginning of all things was to impress upon the people of God some very important lessons. The ones we're going to hit again today are the idea of God's providential care for his people, the centrality of God's people in the world. All things really center upon God's people. And then finally, we're going to take a look at the covenant keeping of God. How does he keep his covenants? What are those promises that he's made? So, next time we'll look at verses 1 through 12, and look at the land of Goshen here, and how Israel makes it into Goshen, and how all that transpires. So we'll come back next time and we'll take a look at that.